Footnotes from the Life Application Study Bible. Capernaum became Jesus' home base during his money changers ministry in Galilee. Located on a major trade route, it was an important city in the region, with a Roman garrison and a customs station. At Capernaum, Matthew was called to be a disciple. This city was also the home of several other disciples and a high-ranking government official. It had at least one major synagogue. Although Jesus made this city his base of operations in Galilee, he condemned it for the people's unbelief. The Passover celebration took place yearly at the temple in Jerusalem. Every Jewish male was expected to make a pilgrimage to Jerusalem during this time. This was a week-long festival. The Passover was one day, and the festival of unleavened bread lasted the rest of the week. The entire week commemorated the freeing of the Israelites from slavery in Egypt. Jerusalem was both the religious and the political seat of Palestine, and it was the place where the Messiah was expected to arrive. The temple was located there, and many Jewish families from all over the world would travel to Jerusalem during the key festivals. The temple was on an imposing site, a hill overlooking the city. Solomon had built the first temple on this site almost 1,000 years earlier, but his temple had been destroyed by the Babylonians. The temple was rebuilt in 515 BC, and Herod the Great had enlarged and remodeled it. John records this first clearing or cleansing of the temple. A second clearing occurred at the end of Jesus' ministry, about 3 years later, and that event is recorded in Matthew, chapter 21, verses 12 through 17. The temple area was always crowded during Passover with thousands of out-of-town visitors. The religious leaders crowded it even further by allowing merchants to set up booths in the court of the Gentiles. They rationalized this practice as a convenience for the worshippers and as a way to make money for temple upkeep. But the religious leaders did not seem to care that the court of the Gentiles was so full of merchants that foreigners found it difficult to worship. Worship was the main purpose for visiting the temple. No wonder Jesus was angry. The temple tax had to be paid in local currency, so foreigners had to have their money changed. But the money changers often charged exorbitant exchange rates. The people were also required to make sacrifices for sins. Because of the long journey, many could not bring their own animals. Some who bought animals had them rejected for imperfections. So animal merchants conducted a flourishing business in the temple courtyard. The price of sacrificial animals was much higher in the temple area than elsewhere. Jesus was angry at the dishonest, greedy practices of the money changers and merchants, and he particularly disliked their presence on the temple grounds. They were making a mockery of God's house of worship. Our attitude towards the church is wrong if we see it as a place for personal contacts or business advantage. Make sure you attend church to worship God and enjoy spiritual fellowship with others. Jesus was obviously angry at the merchants who were exploiting those who had come to God's house to worship. There is a difference between uncontrolled rage and righteous indignation, yet both are called anger. We must be very careful how we use the powerful emotion of anger. It is right to be angry about injustice and sin. It is wrong to be angry over trivial personal offenses. Jesus made a whip and chased out the money changers. Does his example permit us to use violence against wrongdoers? Certain authority is granted to some, but not to all. For example, the authority to use weapons and restrain people is granted to police officers, but not to the general public. The authority to imprison people is granted to judges, but not to individual citizens. Jesus had God's authority, something we cannot have. While we want to live like Jesus, we should never try to claim his authority where it has not been given to us. Jesus took the evil acts in the temple as an insult against God, and thus he did not deal with them half-heartedly. He was consumed with righteous anger against such flagrant disrespect for God. The Jews understood Jesus to mean the temple out of which he had just driven the merchants and money changers. This was the temple Zerubbabel had built over 500 years earlier, but Herod the Great had begun remodeling it, making it much larger and far more beautiful. It had been 46 years since this remodeling had started in 20 BC, and it still wasn't completely finished. They understood Jesus' words to mean that this imposing building could be torn down and rebuilt in 3 days, and they were astonished. Jesus was not talking about the temple made of stones, but about his body. His listeners didn't realize it, but Jesus was greater than the temple. His words would take on meaning for his disciples after his resurrection. That Jesus so perfectly fulfilled this prediction became strong proof for his claim to be God. The Son of God knows all about human nature. Jesus was well aware of the truth of Jeremiah chapter 17 verse 9, which states, "The human heart is the most deceitful of all things, and desperately wicked. Who really knows how bad it is?" Jesus was discerning, and he knew that the faith of some followers was superficial. Some of the people claiming to believe in him at this time would later yell, "Crucify him!" Believing comes easily when it is exciting and everyone else agrees with you. But keep your faith firm even when following Jesus isn't popular.